Alright, should be making a video. Alright, so this is a comment video, but it's going to start with a specific subject, aberration, in the context of gravity, and how somehow this is a problem when it's not. And I'll explain. So I don't know who it's probably Mindless Marbles. It's hard to tell the cowboy from Mindless Marbles. Keeps making accusations in the comments section that I haven't answered a question, or that I was lying about something, or I've certainly made some errors in videos, so if somebody wants to quote my videos to find a mistake, fine. Yeah, you can do that. But I've put videos in playlists for a reason. Those are the videos I want you to debunk. So especially like the magnetism video and the subject videos. There's one called Magnetism, and go ahead and explain how it's not the right answer. Explain how you have any evidence of how that model doesn't work, and explaining the attraction and repulsion witnessed in the magnetic effect. But they don't do that. So I have an email address. It's been posted, ds@draftphysics.com. If you want to type shit, you know, if you can't type a direct point, if you can't make your point without lying as a premise, that is saying something like I never addressed, or you denied conservation of energy, or you denied this, or you did that, you said all math is fake, some kind of lie. If you can't make your argument without lying, then yeah, you're not going to make it on the message boards. I'm just going to block you and delete it. So if you want to make an argument, send me emails. Post links in the emails. You keep complaining you can't post links? Well, post the links in the email. And I'll read your stinking emails and I'll point out how you're a liar. Okay, and that's all it'll take place. But I'm not leaving your lies on my boards. I'm not answering your lies in text. I don't do that. Alright? I don't waste my time trying to type physics arguments. And I don't know why the rest of the human race seems so inarticulate, I guess, or I don't know what their problem is. They can't think on their feet enough. I don't know what it is, but yeah, apparently they can't argue in the most efficient manner possible, which is orally. They can't accomplish the task. So anyway, so he's again brought up, he wants to go back to these other dead subjects, like the stupid time dilation crap about mirrors and, you know, photons and interferometers and stuff moving half the speed of light, or some bullshit, and as if he knows how photons are formed, as if he knows how photons are released from atoms, as if he knows anything about the mechanism at all, like he knows what a photon does when it reflects off a surface. He has no clue. So for that argument I could just give a simple analogy. It's like a quarterback, okay, playing football, and he goes to throw the ball and a tight end comes in and smashes him, knocks him back 5 feet, and takes away all his forward momentum. And since now he has backward momentum, and so now he throws the ball, and it's supposed to be going 40 miles an hour, and the ball only goes 3 miles an hour. Now photons can't do that. Photons can't leave at 3 miles an hour. So obviously, to conserve the energy, if you can't change the speed of the football, then you have to change the position at which the football was released at. So you can sort of understand that if you're going to compensate for the energy change, the momentum changes, you're going to compensate it by changing where the release point is. And that would explain red shift and blue shift, because those are changes in the release point. So that's how you can understand it, is that photons can't adjust their speed. They're like a bird in a cage, and it's constantly a hummingbird, and it's constantly flying. So it doesn't matter whether I'm going 1,000 miles an hour, or 20,000, or 1,000,000 miles an hour. It doesn't matter how fast I'm going. When I release the bird, he's still flying the same speed. He doesn't change his speed, ever. And that's how photons work. Point out how that can't be true. That's the foundation of my theory. Photons are never dead. They don't have to accelerate to a speed, and they don't decelerate, and they don't do any of that crap. And they certainly don't have two motions at the same time. They don't move in two vectors at the same time. they can only have one. They can only go in one direction at one constant speed. So they're just birds that fly dead straight, and they never stop flapping their wings. You can trap them in a circle, but you can't stop them. And again, when you release them, they're not going to go the speed you're moving plus the speed they leave at. No, they're only going to have one momentum. Alright. So this says, this is the Lesage gravity on the subject of aberration. As shown by Laplante, another possible Lesage effect is orbital aberration due to finite speed of gravity. So this would hold true for anybody who believes in the speed of gravity as being slower than instantaneous. Unless the Lesage particles are moving at speeds much greater than the speed of light. Again, totally unnecessary because it totally lacks any understanding of the consequence of any gravitational force. Gravity exists. Whether the moon shows up to make more gravity or not doesn't change the fact that the gravity is already in every position of the orbit of the moon. So where the moon isn't, there's the same amount of gravity pretty much where the moon isn't, because the gravity's created circularly. So this is, I've already argued this point, but I'm just going to stress that, mindless marbles or whoever the fuck it is just such a liar, because I have been over this. And so the whole idea is you're absorbing energy by a particle theory. Now Lesage didn't have this elaborate theory because they just didn't know us enough about atoms and all this other stuff and electrons being bound to each other and all these complexities. So they couldn't develop the theory completely. But the idea is that there's energy coming from all directions. And what essentially a body does when it's all by itself, okay, if it's all alone in the universe, all by itself over here, let's say, and this energy is coming in, it's creating a shadow essentially in all directions, okay? It's going to absorb some of this energy, isn't going to be released again, okay? So the momentum will actually stay inside the body. It will store it as heat. And we see that. The Earth is molten in the center for this very reason. The sun is insanely hot for this very reason. Gravity warms things up. And so the idea would be is that essentially something is casting a shadow. That is, it absorbs some of the energy this way, in the sense it gets trapped, and it absorbs some energy going this way. So it's essentially creating a shadow. If, however you want me to draw a shadow. Shadow is a dotted line, maybe. It's creating a shadow in both directions, up, down, and every direction it's creating a shadow because some of the energy that goes in doesn't come out. And then this thing reaches a kind of thermal equilibrium, but that's thermal equilibrium means it's absorbed a certain amount of energy from the environment, and it continues to keep absorbing it and releasing it. So the Earth is already absorbing energy just by being gravitational, and it's re-radiating it not as gravity but as heat. Okay, it's radiating it as another form of energy. Okay, molecular energy even, just the movement of the little bits inside of it. And so that's sort of the nature of gravity. So gravity is basically a bunch of little balls of stuff that are sticking to each other because of gravity and charge, of course, in atoms. And so the gravity is already there because of the fact that it's constantly absorbing some amount of energy from the field and releasing it in forms that are moving much slower than the speed of light, heat. Moving atoms, and so that much slower stuff. Movement, frankly, that's all you need to say. And so the idea is something shows up gravitationally in that field. There's going to be equal gravity in all these locations. So the speed of any interaction between these two bodies isn't going to make any difference. It doesn't matter how slow it is. It could take 5 minutes for the absorption of energy from this body. Say this one absorbs some gravity, some force, this body doesn't get hit by it, which means this net force on this side becomes stronger than the force on this side. So this is plus and this is now minus. And this body is going to move into that lower pressure. And that'll induce the same thing. It'll just go back and forth. And that's the function of gravity. But the idea is gravity absorbs the force in any one of these directions. So if something hits this way, it's basically going to be converted, and can be converted, into this way, or this way, or this way. The only component that matters is the component of this direction that has something to do with this dimension. And obviously you flip it the other way. And because of spherical symmetry, the two sides are going to do that equally. And so there's always going to be equal gravity at all these points. Essentially, when the moon's in orbit, the Earth is going to feel it, basically, as if the moon was broken into a bunch of little pieces like a Saturn's ring, and it was just in a bunch of little pieces in a circle. So there's no aberration issue. There's no, oh, I missed your gravity because I was moving this way, and you sent the gravity back over. You sent the gravity this way, and I already moved over here, so I don't feel the gravity. That doesn't happen, because the system is a battery. The system dampens any time delays, because it already has a time delay built into it. It already has a huge cushion of heat, of thermal energy, to make transactions with. So nothing has to happen instantaneously. Gravity isn't an instantaneous force, and the fact is it's like a capacitor. Doesn't matter when you put the energy in, just the fact that the energy is in. If that's a way of saying it. So anyway, so I've dealt with this subject, and he just lies as if I haven't done this, and I already did this. Okay, so there is a time delay in the interactions between bodies. Again, we already know that gravity exists, whether I put a test charge there or not. So whether I put the moon in orbit or not, we already know at that location there's a certain amount of gravity where the moon is. The moon doesn't have to be there, doesn't have to interact with the sun, and the net effect is it will increase the gravity of the Earth eventually, because it's another piece of matter, and you just draw the circle around the moon's orbit and you'll know there's more gravity because of the moon's presence, but it's essentially spread across the entire spherical surface of the Earth eventually, in the 2 dimensions, not in 3 dimensions. Obviously, I would argue the solar system has more gravity. All right, if you were to measure the gravity of the solar system, it has more gravity on the plane, that is the pancake, the edge of the pancake, okay, like Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Earth, Venus, you know. They're in sort of a little plane. And so on the edge of the pancake, there's always more gravity than at the same distance this way. This way would have less gravity, because there's more mass in this plane than there is in this plane. Same with like a galaxy. Alright, transit time between the 2 bodies. So again, they're arguing Lesage or Fadio's theory in its original form, where they didn't know nuclear physics, and they're not giving it any kind of benefit of the doubt that they would have compensated for these things if they knew about them. So if they would have known what Newton even knew, well, Fadio did know what Newton knew. Anyway, in the case of orbital motion, this results in each body reacting to a retarded position of the other. So again, they're talking as if the moon, to feel gravity at the moon's orbit, you have to have a moon there. No, the gravity's there whether the moon's next to you or not. I could be here's the moon in the orbit over here, and I could be on the opposite side. I'm going to measure the same amount of Earth gravity at those 2 locations. It's not going to matter. The moon is affecting things outside of the moon's orbit. It's not affecting things inside the moon's orbit. Alright, which creates, I mean, that's the shadow argument. Leading force component, which creates a leading force component. So again, it's just the wrong premise. It isn't a fact. It's certainly not a fact of my theory. So Mindless Marbles apparently doesn't want to argue the theory I've proposed. He wants to argue some other theory. Alright. Contrary to the drag effect, this component will act to accelerate both objects away from each other. So that's like saying there's some possibility that somebody could shine a flashlight at you with a delay, and that somehow that would make you move towards them. You know, any kind of energy. So if they were shooting a fan, so they're blowing air at you, that somehow it's possible in some scenario that they could blow air at you and you would be pushed towards them. That's a ludicrous proposition. So this thing makes an argument that's just completely idiotic. Obviously, there's no possible way that a shadow could create motion away from each other. In order to maintain stable orbits, the effect of gravity must either propagate much faster than the speed of light, so this is just a false premise, or must not be purely central force, be a purely central force. So this is just a false argument. There are other explanations that perfectly satisfy the condition. Again, the matter that's already on the Earth is creating gravity. Your motion into the Earth is profoundly retarded. I mean, it's so slowed down. So the gravity hits you at the speed of light. You convert it through your body much slower, because it's a bunch of electrons pushing on electrons inside your body. So the electrons slow it down. Then you dent the Earth. You know, you dent the cushion on your chair. You don't dent the cushion at the speed of light. No, you dent it a lot slower than that. And then the pressure goes into the Earth, and it goes into the Earth really, really slow. So this is just such a false premise. This has been suggested by many as a conclusive disproof. So this is their preposterous hyperbolic rhetoric, that they've somehow proven something can't happen by a silly premise where they narrowed the possible explanations and said, no, let's see, what's a good example? It's like saying somebody, you can't make a flying machine because tying a kite to a man didn't work. I mean, it's just horrible scientific theory to be that presumptive, to say that, oh yeah, the only possibility is tying kites to human beings, and if kites can't make, well, and kites actually, you know, people can fly with a kite tied to them. In contrast, general relativity is consistent with a lack of appreciable aberration identified by Laplace. And again, they don't show any of this proof, or how Einstein took care of any of these issues of a lack of instantaneous. So you won't find that in a Susskind literature. You really won't. He won't touch the subject. Because even though gravity propagates at the speed of light in general relativity, the expected aberration is almost exactly cancelled by velocity-dependent terms in the interaction. So it's just more mumbo-jumbo. Velocity-dependent terms. What does that mean? The force is always moving the speed of light. The matter is always moving something slower than the speed of light. But where's these velocity terms? They don't have a mechanism for gravity. They just say everything does this magical, I love you, please come to me. I will, you know, stick my fingers out, go, move towards me, and the magical force will make it happen. Alright, so I'll go to the comments. Alright, so he's using the word pint. I don't know what that means, but whatever. And I did put his comments in the spam folder. I didn't delete them. And so YouTube deleted them. So I can't do much about that. So I left this one up. Wow, yeah, now you're too pussy. Again, I'm not too pussy. You can come into this room and make an argument. You can email me an argument. You just can't lie. Okay, I'm not accepting your lies. You're a compulsive liar. And you just start deleting the comments. Well, again, I didn't delete them, so you just keep lying. You keep presuming and assuming things you don't have evidence for. And then you argue about how you give a shit about the scientific method. You obviously don't give a shit about the scientific method. You don't give a shit about having proof before you make an accusation. You're a shit-talking troll, fuckhead. I guess it makes sense. I'd be just embarrassed. Some more nonsense about your projections. Well, I'd be embarrassed to be you. You're obviously too, deformed. Okay, you can't talk apparently well at all. You can't function in this environment, and so you have to resort to this kind of crap. So why don't you show up and try to humiliate me? Why don't you try to do it, jackass? Why don't you come into the room and try to humiliate me on physics? I mean, what, do I have to actually pay you? How much do I have to pay you? Why don't you give me your price? How much do I have to pay you to do a live room? Okay, and answer some of my questions, weasel. If someone pointed as egregious contradictions as yours. So again, there's no contradictions cited in this comment. Why should I tolerate a lie? Egregious contradictions. Where's the contradictions? Alright. So Stacy, who probably shouldn't get into these troll conversations because it's probably not to her advantage, but anyway, his videos sure have helped me understand physics more. Glad I didn't waste money at an expensive university like you did. You don't even need to be a scientist to understand that Bohr, Rutherford, and Einstein made shit up in regards to QM and general relativity. The fraud is easily in sight. The exaggeration of the evidence is easily seen. The fact that they quote mine the evidence is easily seen. If you have the evidence, you don't have to do cheats. You don't have to show up in the OJ trial with your cement footprints, trying to make arguments that somebody else did it with cement footprints, footprints in the cement. I mean, you don't have to have fake evidence, and you don't have to have shitty evidence, and you don't have to make stuff up. So obviously their argument is weak by their own admission, because they wouldn't resort to quote mining the evidence, and they wouldn't resort to making up experiments that never took place if they actually had evidence. It is the reason we have Tesla conspiracy theories on YouTube now. Well, the reason why we have any other physics theories and so many wacky ones is because of the fact that their evidence is so weak, because they sit there and say, we have provided you an answer to the question, and their answer is vacuous. If Newton had said space is bent, which he could have done, I mean, well, you could just say, yes, the inverse square law. Yeah, and the inverse square law basically is a curved line, so if you want to make a dent in a fabric, yeah, that's what it would sort of look like if you used gravity to illustrate gravity. I mean, he could have said something that silly and everybody would have just said, that's just something you just made up. Where's the evidence that any of that crap is happening? That there's some kind of bent thing out there making stuff roll downhill. And obviously, again, when they actually do the math and they actually attempt to model gravity, they model it like mock gravity. They model it just as if there's a flow of something, going from outside to inside. Now they think it's pulling, but the point is push-pull wouldn't make a difference mathematically. And clearly you could argue that's what they converted into. It is the result of our understanding of physics being poor. It's their model being insipid and unevidenced. I mean, it's not only UFO weird and completely obnoxious to it's like a God answer. Okay, I mean, bent space is just spooky action. It's not an answer to the question, what causes things to move into each other. It doesn't explain it. Clearly, a virtual photon doesn't explain attraction and repulsion in magnets. Saying the word field doesn't answer the question. It should easy to explain, but it's confusing for a reason. They made shit up. Yes, certainly Huygens is just a bizarre. Let's see what possible way I can engineer things to create this, mathematical matrix that will allow for things to interfere with each other. So let's create infinite numbers of little baby waves. And we'll even say the word infinite and still call ourselves rational physicists. You know, an infinite number of something in a confined space. They think that's possible, and they think that's rational physics. They made shit up and hid it behind abstract math equations instead of using observational data. Well, certainly the experiment should go first. You should always understand that math is just a formalization of effects. It tries to figure out what the variables are, the things fucking the thing up, the thing causing an effect. They try to find those variables and then see how they can arrange the variables to predict the outcome. But again, it's so focused on effects and not focused on causes, because causes are going to be more complicated than just knowing how big the distance is or how wide the slit is. That's not going to explain why it matters that the slit is changing. Why does the change in the slit matter? That's the question they don't answer. Alright, Pint says, it's the reason we have Tesla conspiracy theories. Okay, her quote. I don't know if I agree. Well, that's, you know, so you're certain about the lies you speak, and yet you can't figure out that, you know, all this Tesla hoopla only exists because Einstein's advancement of physics looks kind of silly. Evolution has been denied for many more centuries, and we still continue to have religious fucktards in denial. And again, I would describe you as exactly the same kind of clock-stopping, backward-thinking traditionalist who says, you know, I like Einstein, I like Susskind, I like Feynman, and so therefore I'm going to like their physics. Even though their physics is, in my opinion, overtly tainted by the fact that their logic is made out of false assumptions. Assumptions where they don't even pay any attention to single-slit patterns, where they lie about detecting experiments that never took place. I mean, huge flaws in their reasoning. Is that somehow the biologist's fault? Well, to some extent, you'd have to argue that, you know, any argument that fails because it's not presented. You haven't molded your key the right way. So you should be able to argue that if the truth fails, it might be the person, the messenger sometimes is the problem. But you know, that's a subtle art. Charisma is a subtle art, not a scientific art. I don't think so. Same for physics. Again, so you know, you're the one who's the traditional religious shithead who won't break free of what mommy told you. And we know people aren't religious because they come to it through rational process. They come to it because their mommy stuck it up their little anus when they were kids and gave them a little bit of a boner. Let's see. The hippocampus, so he's back on this crap again. You know, these crappy satellite data, you know, where they they look at scatter and pretend the scatter is gravitational deflections. It's just nonsense. The data was inconsistent. The one satellite completely disagreed with the other satellite on the actual data. So people won't include that in here. Mission took into account deflection of light by the sun to yield consistent data. So again, you think that's really good evidence. I think it's so marginal. So someone go look it up and you'll see they are strangling a tiny bit of information and trying to make it into a big pile of information. And it's desperately thin evidence. And it was used as a test to see if the deflection curve is right. It tracked thousands of stars for a few years. If that's just some error or a mirage, how is the curve so accurate? So I don't even know what is this even a response to? It would have to be by accident or a conspiracy. What curve is so accurate, and what does this curve prove? Okay, he has yet to acknowledge the mission at all. So here you lie again. I went to the page. I did a video. So you just keep lying at all, too. And it's clear that he's waiting to find some reason to dismiss it. I'm not waiting to find a reason. There's no way. First, you can't get any real data. It doesn't exist. Okay, and going through the process of their number manipulation, I mean, it's an insane process. It goes through this computer analysis, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. And so you trust all that to have to mean something. I can't even theoretically understand how they think this marginal little bit of data is going to prove anything, so that he never has to acknowledge it. Well, again, what you haven't acknowledged is that what the hell's his name? The Eddington experiment is dirt simple. All right, I mean, it just doesn't take much. Photographic film and a decent telescope. That's all it takes, and it hasn't been repeated in 200 years. Well, 100 years. Why? And we had perfect conditions, and it wasn't repeated with the comparable technology. So what? You know, if you have proof of this, again, we have all these satellites up in space, all kinds of spy satellites, all kinds of cameras, infrared, all kinds of different satellites with decent optics. And you don't need great optics when you're in space, okay? Because you don't have all this atmospheric problem. So, okay, if the Hubble can't look at the dark space next to the sun because it's scared it might jump into the sun somehow, why have none of the other satellites done it? I mean, your argument is just so bullshit. The evidence for gravitational lensing is pathetically weak. YouTube doesn't like long comments, so I have to break them up into chunks, sadly. No, you posted 6 comments on one video, and they were this long, so that's just another one of your lies. So that's another reason why I spam them, because they look like spam, a bunch of fucking comments by one person. You make one comment and leave it at that, fuckhead. Who do you think you are? You're entitled to 6 comments on a video? That's spamming, shithead. QM calculations are used in the field of I can never say this word. Spectrography. So anyway, and material science. So again, no, just the calculations aren't QM calculations. That's just more horse shit. You just threw that in for no reason whatsoever. How is it that aberration for the sake of abstraction? How is that for just abstraction for the sake of abstraction? I don't know what that could possibly mean. Interpretation craps aside, that in itself is observational data. Again, who's denying observational data? I'm saying there's a pattern when there's a single slit, and I'm saying there's a pattern when there's a double slit. You're the one who says you know what's causing them and that it's this wave interference crap. And just like in the radar experiment, I can just point out to you, well, jamming would use exactly the same math. And he does disagree with the math here because he uses wave math. I don't do that. And he does disagree with the math here because it uses wave math, Schrodinger's equation. I don't disagree with the equation. I don't disagree that the effect in the 2 slits is the same. As if. Okay? But what I've stated overtly is the simplest pattern you can create in the universe. On-off. So of course there could be more than one cause for an on-off pattern. So it's always going to look coincidental if all you're going to do is say, oh, the pattern is on-off. I mean, you can't see how imbecilic it would be to say every on-off, every single scenario that would create bars of light has to be wave interference. You can't see how that's preposterous presumption on your part. And if that's all you have as evidence is the bars, well, yeah, it's kind of, there's lots of ways you could theorize the bars are created. And as I stated, I don't really hate the equation. The equation doesn't have Huygens in it. The equation doesn't have the presumption of wave interference in it. The equation has sine theta. It has an angle in it. And it says light goes there. And then light goes 3 degrees. and then light goes 6 degrees, and then light goes 9 degrees, and light goes 12 degrees. That's all it does. That's all the equation says. And so where am I disagreeing with that? That's exactly what I'm saying. Light goes at a specific increment of degrees. So it's just more lies that I've disagreed with the math. I didn't disagree with it. I disagreed with all the assumptions you have going into the math, which you claim to be how you create two waves coming out of the single slit, and yet you don't do it when you have a double slit. So in the single slit, magically there's two waves created. Somehow when you have a double slit, there's not four waves created. Because of your shenanigans. Not because the formula says do that. No, you decide to do that. Alright, she says, biology can't hide behind math. Well, I don't know what that means, but whatever. The reality of evolution has already been established, and many more fossils we find. Well, I mean, the volume of evidence for evolution is fucking insanely heavy. Okay, it's really strong evidence for evolution. And again, the fact that they're not conceding their evidence for bent space is a lot weaker than that. They don't have any fossils, and they don't have any genetics, and they don't have any geology. They don't have anything. They have thought experiments. They have this make-believe notion that when photons are going perpendicular to a spaceship and they're moving, the photons move forward. They don't have any real evidence for any of this crap. Deeper understanding all the species living extinct. In physics, you can use math correctly and still arrive at shit explanations or no explanation at all. Clearly, there's variables that can be identified. Okay, because you can play with them and you say, look, it changes things. So clearly you can identify variables and you can identify effects. And you can identify the connection between the variables and the effects. But understanding why, again, it's the Newton thing. Newton told you what the variables are, mass, distance, and he told you what the effect is going to be. But he said, I feign no explanation for how it happens. I have no clue how it happens. What's making it happen? And physics does the opposite. It says, no, we'll pretend we know. And we'll just make up crap that is again, it's, in my opinion, the explanation is silly. Bent space is silly explanation. Virtual photon is a silly explanation. Dark matter is obviously just a contrived, desperate, it's desperately bad as an explanation. It's Invisible Man stupid. Okay. Let's see. Any biologist caught being fraudulent has to be crafty. In physics, it's easy to be a liar because most of humanity is fucking stupid and won't examine the evidence and think rationally. Well, clearly physicists can get away with it because it's more complicated than just pointing you at the brontosaurus skeleton. I mean, you know, pointing to the brontosaurus skeleton or pointing to the ape man or pointing to the, you know, that's really easy to do. But, yeah, a mathematical equation doesn't say anything. I have a book for you to read then. Read Gravitational Force by the Sun by, I don't know, some other tinfoil hat kook, no doubt. She goes into great detail about Gravity Probe B from Stanford and how the data they have collected is not definitive proof for frame dragging. All of these satellites is very marginal technology. I mean, they're really pushing the limits of what's possible. I mean, the whole gravitational LIGO, gravitational wave thing, it's such thin physics, and it's reliant on silly. Again, they made up an idea that you can take solar mass, that is, you can take electrons, protons, and neutrons, and somehow convert them into bent space. Not convert them into light or any other form of electromagnetic energy, but convert them into bent space. I mean, Einstein never suggested any such thing. It's just made up crap. Alright. Okay, it's unlikely we'll come to agreement in this thread, so I think a good compromise is to say that we need both correct math and correct explanations. But again, this why do we need math? Look, I'm not against math, but I'm just saying, why do I need math? You should be able to draw a picture of it, frankly. It's stuff moving. You should just be able to draw the picture of it. It's stuff moving. You should be able to just draw it. What's so complicated? What do I need math for? I mean, it's nice to understand, you know, how many times a wheel rolls on an inclined plane and how fast it moves. All that might be nice to know, but does it really have anything to do with the logic behind the thing, which you're saying, okay, gravity's pushing down, that's a force in this direction, it has a vector in this direction, and all of the mass will be subtly pushed in this direction, but first it has to go this way to go this way. I mean, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with understanding why. Oh, look at this crap. With regards to his theory, he literally, so here we go again, once said that a magnet could attract a stream of water from a faucet just like a charged comb would. Alright, I don't know what context I said that in, but yeah, I don't know, a strong enough magnet, yeah. You know, I mean, obviously charge and I'm saying charge and magnetism are the same thing. It's just that you know, you can't, dipoles, it's hard to create an unpolluted dipole, but if you have a strong enough magnet, you should be able to get the same effect. Now, the problem is whether you can, you know, this charge reaches further, whether you can ionize the water before the water gets to where you are. Obviously, you have to ionize the water before you can repel. So it has to first be converted into an opposite polarity before it can repel, right? Or attract. So that's the catch, is the magnet doesn't have the reaching power. So again, you're sure that you know that the force, all right, that causes magnetism and the force that causes charge, you know they're somehow different, fundamentally different. And you know that through what experiment? Just with something so basic as electrostatics. So you just keep using words like electrostatics, like as if their theory of electrostatics has any more definition than their theory of bent space or their theory of virtual photon. Their theory of electrostatics is built on virtual photon. Non-existent force, fake fields, they just made up. It's just so painfully obvious he's talking out of his ass. Well, again, I'm drawing then out of my ass also, but whatever. Fuck you. I don't have to use that. I have a neodymium magnet I used. Yeah, well, the problem is it's still a dipole. And the fact is the dipole is diminishing at the r cubed rate rather than the r squared rate. And the surface area of the magnet is tiny compared to the charged comb and other objects, other things you might use. All right. I have a book for you to read. Okay. So then he says, it's well known Gravity Probe B had trouble midway. It would be remarkable if there were problems with all the other relevant missions. So all the other relevant missions, including the one I mentioned. Yeah, there are problems. So again, he just pretends it's really hard science that you know is proving something when it's really on the edge of possible. It's you know, but whatever. Just going to leave one more comment then. Kind of pointless to make him read all this shit. In science, the physical observations and providing a rational explanation is more important than the fucking math. Yeah, well, that's sort of, we agree that they're misunderstanding utility with truth. I mean, yeah, it's great to know math if you have to design something, a machine, and it's going to have to not have too much friction, and it can't be vibrating, it can't fall. If you're building a building and you don't want it to fall down in an earthquake, yeah, it's nice to know some math to be able to figure out what your limitations are. But it doesn't give you theory of earthquake. The math formula should be the final thing on the to-do list. Also, it's a relevant book. You're just ignoring anything that challenges your position. Yes, that's all he's doing. Oh, and he says, fair enough. Huh, funny. Hilarious. Alright, so I'll do this Bob the Fly comment. I mean, he's conceding we can't communicate, and so maybe just ought to leave it there. I'm not sure why we have so much trouble communicating with each other. Well, it's probably because, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's your fault. That's all I'm going to say. I'm fairly stubborn, so I'll try again. Well, whatever. Matter and forces are your two categories. Yes, I've been over it 4 million times. Matter doesn't do anything. It doesn't move on its own. It has to be pushed by a force. Matter contains electrons, protons, and whatever composite particles exist. Yes. Electrons and protons are charged. That is, they filter the force. Forces contain speed of light or near speed of light bits such as photons. Yes, such as any momentum imposing field that could be described. The electromagnetic fields, gravitational fields, they're all made of little bits moving the speed of light, and they transfer their momentum to matter. And by transferring their momentum doesn't go where it was going. I guess my question was more about specifics. For example, what forces do you believe exist that travel at or near the speed of light? So again, this is just so fucking idiotic. I have a video called the one force field or something. The one field force or something like that. But I've pointed this out a million times. It's all one force. And all you can do is segregate it for its electron force or proton force. So it's blue or it's red or it's round or it's square, however you want to look at it. So the force comes in two flavors. Otherwise it's all the same. It moves the same speed, has the same momentum. Every one of them is identical. So the little force bits, little BBs, are just red BBs and blue BBs. They all move at the speed of light and they never stop. And all that can happen is the blue BB can hit an electron and be absorbed. That is, it's going to exchange a BB going this way for a BB going that way. So a BB going that way will leave, and a BB going this way will stay inside the little matter bit, and the matter bit will move. Because it has a little BB in it. It captured the momentum until it releases the momentum. So if it eventually releases the bird, then it doesn't have the flight capacity of the bird. You can almost think of it as like lassoing birds, if you want to do it that way, or lassoing fish. There's a bunch of birds flying around all directions. The electron discriminately lassos one. So it lassos a bird that's going this way, and it releases a bird going that way. The idea would be now this bird is pushing it in this direction, so it's going to push it in that direction. A horse even, you could just use horses. You lasso a horse going this way, you release a horse going that way. Which way is your wagon going to go? But that's all that's happening. The matter bits absorb momentum, hold it for a period of time, and move. Now they move much slower than the speed of light, because the horse can run a lot faster when it's not pulling a wagon. Alright, matter contains electrons. Okay. Let's see. For example, what forces do you believe exist that travel at or near the speed of light? So they're all the same force. So gravity is the force without a frequency and unfiltered. That is, protons are filtering just as much as electrons, and on balance you end up with the same effect. Dipole effect. They pollute each other. So any yin that the electron causes, the proton creates a yang, and they negate each other as a charge force. And then photons are just the same force at a frequency. So blue force, electron force, and you just make sure the little bits, the birds, have a certain distance between them. That's a photon. Photons are one example that you frequently list. Your matter bits classification is clear at this point. How do I make sense of the sentence? Photons are one example that you frequently list. Your matter bits classification is clear at this point. I don't know how that's just a non sequitur. I know that you don't accept the existence of positrons, for example. Well, why should anybody rational accept their existence? They're smaller than photons, that is, they go right through every single material body in the universe, and yet they're moving slower? Does that make any sense? How does that make sense to you? So they're matter bits, they can't be force bits, and there's somehow matter bits that go right through all material objects? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Alright, superior mind added something. Dear, dear, dear. Well, we'll read it. I'm not DraftScience, but I can try to answer in part. There are two types of photons which are responsible for charge effects which attract or repel, depending on what they are, what they're between, electrons, protons. And all force types are the same sort of exchange or accumulation of photons. Yeah, again, but the photons, they're not photons, obviously. Graviton is not a photon. Magneton is not a photon in the sense of using vernacular. I'm just saying it's force bits. I mean, I've tried to create language that people can understand. They're little bits of force, little bits. You put the little bits of force at a frequency, then it's called the electromagnetic spectrum. The little bits aren't at a frequency, it's called gravity. The little bits are segregated for their charge potential, electron force versus proton force, then you have a magnet. That's it, not that complicated. Photons without a frequency cause gravity and strong weak force, and without frequency are not going to easily be detectable. Obviously, we couldn't detect radio waves. It took Hertz 8 years to figure out how to detect them. He knew they existed, and yet he couldn't find them. It took him 8 years to figure out how to do it. So, yeah, without a frequency, energy is really hard to detect. It's just a fact. You need a frequency to look at something and see it as blue, for example. The trick is you need an awful lot of energy. Again, nobody's really appreciating how much light it would take to move this pen across this much distance. And yet gravity does it all the time. So people just don't appreciate how much energy is really in the force of gravity. Because if you had to make it out of photons, you would realize it's a lot more energy than you realize. I.e., if only one photon, no color, and if it is blue for only two, see, now you're just going to get in trouble. You know, talking about photons as an analogy for charge, because the only thing that you need to know about the electromagnetic spectrum is that it's electron force. The electromagnetic spectrum affects electrons. You have only one photon, and if it is blue or only two photons, you'll never notice it. So again, it's not, the trick with photons is the ray length. The ray length decides how much the electron is moved. It decides how much you push in the trampoline, and how much you push in the trampoline decides how much energy you get back out of it. And so photons store energy in electrons and allow for a stored energy response, that is, for another frequency to be produced. We can know that matter is some configuration of photons, force bits also. Proposals for what type of configuration causes electrons or protons may still be in a draft phase. Well, I don't even know why I would waste time attempting to dissect an electron, since it's difficult to know what the current evidence available, but the rules for how they work with two force bit types can be known. Yes, the rules are simple enough that who cares? Electron force reflects off electrons, proton force reflects off of protons, and a reflection means you've exchanged a horse going this way for a horse going that way. Neutrons may be an electron-proton in very close configuration, making it possible for another proton to enter the configuration on the opposite side. So again, neutrons are just a way of providing a mechanism that creates low pressure between two protons. So the two protons hate each other, but if you stick an electron between them, then they love each other because all the reflective energy leaks out of the electron. And the same would be true of two electrons with a proton in between them. The two electrons could get very close if there was a proton in between them. Alright, force can become trapped between electrons, holding them at a distance in a geometrically balanced formation to attain force equilibrium. Well, it's obviously an equilibrium based on trapping ping pong balls between paddles. So again, if I have a ping pong ball bouncing between two paddles, if I add another ball, you can understand that that's going to be twice the amount of pushing force. Now if I cut the distance in half, you can understand that's going to be twice as much pushing force. So obviously distance has everything to do with how much force there is, because the force is bouncing between the electrons. It's reflecting. I exchange the horse. He exchanges the horse. I exchange the horse. He exchanges the horse. Force can become trapped between electrons, holding them at a distance in a geometrically balanced formation to attain force equilibrium, meaning that the electrons are in a tension. They're attracted to the proton, but they're repelled by the other electrons. So the electrons are pushing the electron out. The proton is, because of the low pressure between the electron and the proton, because all the energy leaks out, no reflections. So the electron is being pulled, okay, not really pulled, but the external force is pushing it towards the proton, but the electrons are an opposing force pushing it out. So electrons are tending to push electrons out, protons are pushing electrons in. And that's the tension that keeps an atom stable. Alright, force can be created, we already did that. Alright, external random converging force bits hold everything together fairly tightly. Right, so the external pressure is the only source of energy, and all you're really doing is either creating high pressure reflections or low pressure deflections. So if the energy deflects perpendicularly, then there won't be any reflections, there'll be low pressure. If the energy is reflecting back and forth, it obviously increases the pressure because the energy doesn't escape. It stays in the system, constantly pushing the things apart. Alright, so I think that's it for published comments. It's probably enough of a video, realistically. My tooth reinfected, so I'm back on penicillin. Don't need this right at this point in my life, but whatever. It's always some kind of shit. Alright, so I don't think there's anything in the spam folder. I mean, anything terribly relevant. So these are some of the comments I this time put in the spam folder. Let's also not forget how you burst out at Stephen Bro, all just for merely posting on Haffaday's channel. Yeah, why don't I have a right to say that? Yeah, if he's taking instruction from Haffaday, I'm going to point out how, well, why are you going to an idiot? You know. So again, what is that proof of? The fact that I have standards? I'm not allowed to have personal standards? So let's say you didn't like Donald Trump and you had a friend who was going to go have dinner with Donald Trump and, you know, play patty cake later with him and stuff. That wouldn't be good enough reason for you to say, hey, maybe I don't want to be friends with this idiot. In any case, there's you dishonest little pivot. I don't know what that even means. Just one video ago you said you never rude first. So again, how is it rude? I'm not allowed to hold anybody to any standards. I'm not allowed to call a criminal. That's being rude. And now you goal shift and say you do it whenever you think you're justified. And even do it in this video too. Yeah, but the point is I'm not hypocritical in my standards. So again, which you're not making a logical argument here. I mean, clearly Hafliday has been an insipid, playing a silly game where he won't say words like it's weak evidence. He says he can't find an experiment, and he still won't say it's weak evidence. I mean, he's an amazing piece of shit. No doubt you'll continue contradicting yourself. Again, I've never done that. In the future, when you'll go back to saying that you never pissed first, despite the fact that you admit to it in this video. Well, I don't admit to it. Clearly, what you consider fighting words and what I consider fighting words might be different. We can have different standards of when you're being insulted by somebody. And so you can certainly have those problems. But I'm just saying my record is sort of clear. I have had civil conversations with people I fundamentally disagree with because they acted like an adult. All right? So all you have to do is act like argue the argument. And if you're going to get personal, then yeah, we're not going to have an argument. I'm not accepting your lies or your insults. I'm not doing that. I don't have to do that, shithead. You're an anonymous piece of troll shit. Why should I have to tolerate that? Wow. Now you're too pussy. Okay, so we already read that one. So this one, I didn't spam this one. So let's see what this one is. I don't know if I agree. So we did already read this one. So I don't know. Somehow it's in both categories. It's been approved and it wasn't approved. Alright, just one video ago you were saying how you're never rude first. So this is just more redundancy. So the same damn comment. So yeah, I'll delete that one. So he posted some other crap, but I don't know where that is. It's not here. So I don't know if he deleted it or what, but it's not here. Alright, so let me see what this we'll see what is. Oh, look at all this crap. Fuck. Let me explain to you why real physicists don't take you seriously. Now, they're cowards. Okay? They take flat earthers seriously, don't they? They debunk the flat earthers. Well, yeah, it's because it's easy, because they're so obviously wrong. They don't take me on because they're cowards. Okay, it has to do with math. No, it has to do with them being cowards. Okay, now math doesn't mean throwing around a word salad in your conversation. Well, I mean, math doesn't say anything. I'm just saying if you think math says something besides, oh yeah, I went to Las Vegas and I counted where the ball landed and then I figured out that there's a probability that it lands in one of the holes. That's all math is, jackass. Peppering your videos with math-sounding phrases like Maxwell's equations. Well, there are Maxwell's equations. They're rather known as Maxwell's equations. Everybody talks about Maxwell's equations. I'm not the one who invented saying Maxwell's equations or Einstein's field equations. These aren't things I invented, jackass. Everybody refers to these things. And the inverse square law, yes, which is rock solid shit and exactly what mock gravity creates. The easiest way to demonstrate the inverse square law is mock gravity, shithead. And others just to sound impressive. No, why it sounds impressive is because it's actually the truth, okay? Maxwell actually liked particle gravity. Who was the other guy? The other mathematician. And said if you could demonstrate it, you know, with some other, you know, some kind of, you know, experiment or something, that, you know, this would be the revolution. As if you had the faintest clue what they actually mean. What I mean, you know, Maxwell and Faraday, these people believed in straight line force, shithead. Now, even though they were ether nuts, they understood what a straight line force creates. Field lines, idiot. What math means is the context is that when it comes to observed experimental data, your theory has two choices. Well, fuck you. Yeah, like you know the rules of science. So again, he's going to tell me every time there's an on-off pattern, it has to be wave interference. No, it doesn't. Heisenberg, you're going to write that down as a law. I can throw up its hands and admit that it offers no explanation. Right, virtual photon offers no explanation. Claiming there's fields that you can't describe how they work mechanically is no explanation. that it takes the observed data as an unexplained given. I don't even know what that means, but fine. No harm in being humble. Experiments are great, and what they haven't done is enough of them. They haven't played with the experiments, as I stated before, to try to tease out the truth. I mean, when you start playing with single slits, double slits, and multiple slits, you start to figure out that, oh wait, this doesn't match with single slits, and it doesn't match with multiple slits. And what's happening with multiple slits? Oh, images are being sent to the locations. And again, as I pointed out, if I make the laser beam smaller than the width of the slits, then I'll get little round bars, indicating that it's not random, that there isn't some sort of blending of images, that the surface is retained, the image of the surface is retained through the process. Wave interference doesn't explain that shit for brain. Mainstream does that with 1 to 183 whatever ratio of electron to proton mass. And again, how do you do this weighing of an electron and a proton? These two charged bodies that you can't isolate from charge, it's just fucking impossible. It's impossible to put them somewhere where they're isolated from charge and then bring your ruler in to measure how much gravity is affecting them. How do you can't measure their mass in any real terms. You can only measure their mass relative to each other. Oh, you're just so pathetically stupid. And clearly, the only relevance to this subject is the proton clearly, okay, in a sense, has to have a much stronger density of charge, right? It has the same charge, but the density has to be much greater because of the distance the electron is from the proton. Fuck. The ratio of electron to proton mass, or the 1 to 10 to the 40 ratio of gravity to magnetism strength. So again, this has nothing, none of this is in dispute. I'm not disputing any of these ratios or any of this stuff. I'm clearly going to argue that you can't make an absolute statement about the actual mass of a proton or an electron. You can only make relative comparisons. The second option is that a theory can claim to explain the experimental data. In that case, you step into the ring, and if your explanation doesn't match observed results, well, again, just exactly what I pointed out in the Susskind video, his claims don't match the evidence. The experiments he's claiming were done weren't done, and he hasn't even described the experimental data accurately, presuming that single-slit patterns don't exist. This whole conversation was based on the presumption that single slits don't create the same pattern. You get knocked out. So yeah, game over. Exactly. I just knocked him out. Game over. He cited experiments. He cited as evidence experiments never conducted, and he misdescribed 300-year-old experiments. Sayonara. Mainstream explains the magnetic moment of an electron. An electron can't have a magnetic moment. It's just retarded. It's not a dipole, retard. It's charge. It always has charge. Now the only thing that changes is its relative position to a proton. That's the only moment it can have. It can't have a magnetic moment as an independent thing. Only the atom can have a magnetic moment, you dumb fuck. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid for you to make those kind of proclamations. You're so goddamn stupid to think that a fucking electron is a dipole of the electron to an impressively accurate degree of precision, which is just absolute crap. It's just crap, okay? I mean, precision through what experiment? Again, show me how they precisely measured the magnetic moment. Show me. Show me. Your theory, you offer an explanation of an electron, a single electron. All right. In your theory, you offer an explanation of magnetism as filtered gravity. Yes, there's a video. Debunk it somehow. Explain how any part of that video can't be true, that there's an experiment somewhere demonstrating that anything I said can't be the reality. That explanation falls flat on its face after 2 seconds for anyone who has ever used a magnet. The most idiotic statement ever stated in the history of mankind. The filtering effect happens after the gravitational effect, shithead. It doesn't change gravity any. It just means that another magnet can detect the fact that you've segregated the force. Another magnet can see that, oh, you've changed it. You've changed something that was mixed, blue and red, and now you've made it red all on this end and blue all at this end. And another magnet can detect that. Retard. There is no way that your theory can explain why magnetism is 10 to the 40 times stronger than gravity. Yeah, the theory segregation is important, so that's what explains it, you idiot. If I have two ping pong paddles and I let's see, what's the right way to say it? I'm just trying to come up with a way to metaphor the two competing forces, absorption versus deflection. But clearly you can understand that if, let's see, I'm just trying to think of a way to say how, give you some analogy to some other substance where clearly the segregation matters. So if you had dirt in water and you filtered out the dirt from the water, you could understand that the mass of the dirt is going to be much, much greater. You could understand, let's say, well, the dirt would be lighter than the water, actually. So, yeah, the dirt probably would end up lighter than the water, depending on what the dirt is made out of course. Well, anyway, but you can just go based on its opaquity. So you could say, well, look how much more opaque the dirt is when all the dirt is collected in a little pile. None of the light gets through the dirt. Where with the dirty water, yeah, a lot of the light still got through. That kind of thing. That's the analogy I was looking for. If I'm wrong, well, look, you're so presumptuous. You're saying that you know in seconds that my theory is wrong. You're not even going to address a single issue or point raised in the damn video, how it explains why there's repulsion and attraction, which your theory doesn't explain at all. You have no clue. You say virtual photon. Well, sometimes the virtual photon causes things to move towards you, and then sometimes the virtual photon causes things to move away from you. That's all you've got. You're saying that makes sense to somebody? Who? Then please go ahead and explain to us why filtered gravity is 10 to the 40 times stronger than raw gravity. Well, again, this number has to do with the magnitude of the objects. So again, you're playing a game. Obviously, the force is not 10 to the 40th times weaker. It's obviously, you're comparing an Earth and a moon to an electron and a proton. So, yeah, clearly that's a size difference, idiot. Oh, man, you're just so dishonest, you people. I mean, insanely dishonest. For any serious physicist, your theory becomes a joke after 30 seconds. So this is just more crap. You haven't said anything. There's no argument here. Nothing. What have you said? You measured a 10 to the 40th times difference in the gravity versus charge between an electron and a proton. I mean, it's just on its face idiotic in the sense that obviously a photon that traveled across the universe and hits the electrons in my eye from a star, billions of light years away. That photon hits the electron with exactly as much energy as if I was looking at my light bulb over here. It's the same amount of energy. The electrons move the same amount. So even though only 1 in a trillion of the photons that left that sun actually gets to my eye, its effect is always the same amount of energy. It's not a lesser photon because it traveled further. So obviously, when you're talking about charge between electrons and protons, you're talking about the speed of light in between a distance this tiny. So you can understand. So if I have ping pong paddles that are 10 feet apart, and there's one tiny little bit bouncing between them, you can understand that if I bring those paddles so close, that they're bouncing an insane speed in between the two, that you'd understand that it went from having 1 hit per second here, 1 second to get from here to here, and that at this scale, the right next to each other scale, there's going to be 1 trillion hits per second. Can you understand? That's the 10 to the 40, shithead. All right. Gravity's a nuclear force. Sorry you don't understand that, but yeah, that's how it turns out. Alright, so the cowboy, no doubt, wanted dead or alive, whatever. You mean you'll play Susskind and talk over him? Okay, I didn't talk over him. I played his video. So again, something none of you weak asses can do. Actually play my videos, not quote mine them, not distort them, not change them. I let Susskind say his shit. I pointed out where he was in error. I didn't ignore anything. What point did he make that I ignored? Where did he say something brilliant and I ignored it? Where? Where did that happen, liar? What he's saying so you can take sound bites out of context. So how do I take anything out of context? He's saying all the words are right there. I didn't let a whole bunch of it go by and then paraphrase it. No, I wait for each point. I make my point, my counter argument. If he's going to fix something stupid he said, it'll be right there in the video for anybody to see. Well, why don't you point out where that happened? Because it didn't happen, jackass. He never fixed his stupid statements. Hoping your stupid audience forgets that the actual subject matter was. Okie dokie. So again, these people think it's unfair to actually play somebody's argument. Like Hoffaday never plays my videos, philosophy videos, and actually quotes me, honestly. He always just paraphrases. So in his most recent video, he says some stupid thing like, I said the purpose of mankind is to find a purpose. I never said that. I said, what would an intelligence do if it showed up somewhere? If you took an intelligence and just placed it somewhere, some universe, 10 dimensions, 50 dimensions, who cares? Some place. What's it do? Well, it takes in sense data and says, what's going on here? What's important? Is there anything of interest? It looks around. It's going to say, do I need to know anything? Is there anything, is there swords going to hit me? Is there something I need to know about? And that was my simple statement, that we arrive here on Earth and what do? We basically say, what's important? What's going on? And what we find out is, oh, I have these fucking sensations. I can feel really good or I can feel really shitty. That's one of the first facts I observed when I arrived on Earth. That was the first thing I noticed that seemed a little bit important, that I could feel really shitty or I could feel really good. Honestly, you don't have much to lose, Glare. Just the facts. So again, I'm the one pointing out how he has no respect for the facts. The fact of single slit pattern, and the fact that they never did a detector argument. They never proved Heisenberg. This is all just lying. Alright, dude, whatever this is, in this video alone you were rude. How was I rude? Did what? In what way was I rude? I mean, you can't quote the rude statement I made? You don't remember Bob the Fly, one of your sycophants who actually watches your dumb videos? Well, it seems you watch them also, and wants to talk with you about your dumb theory, ask legitimate question. What legitimate question did he ask? After 7 years of talking about the difference between force and matter, he couldn't figure out which one was which. And I'm supposed to say something other than, fuck you. And you go off on him. Yes, because he's wasting my fucking time. Obviously, we can't communicate. If he hasn't figured out after 7 years that I make a huge distinction between forces and matter, then, you know, yes, he hasn't been paying any attention. And you never answer the question. What question was there? What fucking question was there? What would you like us, your YouTube audience, to call these forces that move the speed of light? Yeah, they call them force. That's fine with me. Just call it the force. The force bits. Is that too complicated? You don't like the word twans. Well, I guess you don't like the word wavicles. How about that? I guess because you were all butthurt when I made fun of you for the name. Well, yeah, you're just trying to make it gay. So you think you win the argument because, see, somebody could say my name sounds like fairy, Gary, fairy. You know what? I'm supposed to say that's an impressive character assassination, when especially from some butthole who doesn't put his own face and his own dopey name. He doesn't put anything on the table. A little fucking troll like you, a little weak-ass coward stealing John Wayne's fucking image. And you're such a weak coward. You're such a girly man fucking pussy. So you do have a better name. Yeah, I've been calling them force bits for 4 years at least. Dude, have you ever watched a video of yours prior to like 2018? It's like 88% calling people cunts. That's just a lie. So you can keep saying that kind of shit, but it's just a lie. The videos were titled. I talked about the subject of the material in the videos. This is just such bullshit. I mean, so you'd prefer that I didn't read your comments and respond to your comments. Is that what you're saying? Just stop making comment videos. Because that's all you're talking about here. You're talking about the comment videos. You're not talking about the videos where I'm explaining my theory. Again, I go to the trouble to put them in playlists, and you don't apparently have any desire to pay any attention to those primary videos, and instead want to do this. He's such a weasel. Then stop pretending to be, again, like he thinks I'm going to go to all these time codes to hear what I said. You know, yeah, sure I am, retard. Then stop pretending to be against at people who come into your channel should choose not to have an utmost decorum when pointing out how full of shit your stupid science is. Okay, look, it's fine. I'm just saying why I wouldn't be able to do it on, say, Suskind's videos, right? I couldn't talk trash on his videos. Everybody go insane. So I'm just saying you're such hypocrites to think I'm not entitled to any fucking respect. No, fuck you, I am. If you can't make a scientific argument, if you can't just make your argument. When I argued with Professor Lewin, I didn't go on the video saying, gee, you're an old fucking stupid dotterhead. No, I made my goddamn point. I said, could you link me to evidence where you have, you know, where there's physical evidence that the speed of the emitter or the speed of the receiver changes how much redshift there is. Obviously he didn't have any example and gave me a stupid answer like Sputnik, which isn't sound waves, but anyway. Stop pretending you give a fuck about politeness when you don't offer the same level of decency to the very people that actually support you and your crank science bloody hypocrite. So again, I don't care about this support crap. This doesn't mean anything. All I care about is arguments. I'm really not interested in having conversations with people who get it. Okay, if you get it, I don't need to have a conversation with you, do I? No, it's the people who don't get it I have to have the conversation with. So I don't know what you're saying I'm supposed to do. If people think I'm right, then they can just type, well, I think you're right. That sounds logical to me. There, are we done? Now we're done, right? But the people you're saying I'm supposed to let them, because one moment they say, gee, I like your theory, and the next minute they say something stupid that somehow my theory has flying watermelons in it. Why the hell should I get pissed off when I'm like, fuck you, there's no flying watermelons in my theory, you idiot. Mathematics does formalize effects, but you're the one claiming that the mathematics is wrong. So that's another lie, just a grotesque lie. I cited how it's completely consistent with Maxwell's mathematics, my theory. It's perfectly consistent with how Susskind mathematically deconstructs bent space. There's no incompatibility, shithead. There's no mathematics beyond the really strangled crap, string theory or something that I'm finding objection to. So fuck you and that bullshit. Your claim that double slit math does not account for the single slit diffraction pattern. Again, did I say that somewhere? No, I didn't say that. I said what it doesn't do is it doesn't, you can't use water waves as a parallel because water waves don't behave the same way as photons do. Not even close. And in the same breath claim you aren't disputing the math. Well, it's just a lie. Again, where did I dispute? Where did I make an argument? It's an on-off pattern. You know, clearly you can have lots of mathematical equations that create that. And again, the math has only a sine theta in it. How you create the angle. There's no Huygens in the math. There's no breaking the single slit into two waves in the math. None of that happens in the mathematical formula. All the formula has in it is sine theta. It has the angle. It doesn't have any of the algebra they do to create the angle idiot. And that's what I'm disputing, is their silly interpretation of the cause. Ah, you're a conspiracy kook. Fuck you. Not even close. Just as an aside, notice how you're almost 10 minutes in, and so far it's been all rude asshole liars and my righteous ass calling them. So he puts it in quotes when it's not an actual quote. So this is, again, if people had good evidence to make, if they could make a good argument, why would they lie? Why would they distort my statement if they have proof of something, if the evidence was good? So if I was so bad, why not quote the actual thing I said to demonstrate how horrible I am, instead of putting fake words in the quotes? So why are you using a fake argument? Why are you using fake evidence to make your argument? Oh, that's right, because your argument is weak. But already this is an hour-long video and 10 minutes have been spent on this, so that's more than 5% of my calculations. Carry on. And clearly what was pointed out is the same thing that's been pointed out before, that all of these talking heads of physics, all of these icons of physics, they've accepted a theory and they're using as evidence for their theory garbage. Garbage interpretations, a misinterpretation of the actual history. Again, why don't you explain to me, once Newton discovered Newton's rings and once Newton did the single hair experiment, what is so remarkable about the Young experiment? Why don't you explain how the Young experiment was a remarkable innovation? There are many experiments attempting to show which slit the light went through. Again, I just keep asking you to show me the paper, show me the links to these great experiments. The only ones I've seen aren't so great. One of them was the quantum, so he's back to quantum eraser. Yeah, I don't believe you have a crystal that creates two opposite polarity photons. I don't believe you understand what a polarizing filter is, so I don't think you even understand how they work, let alone you know that they don't affect the photon that passes through them. I mean, all your assumptions. And someone posted a link to the video of that one. Video of what one? So you know that exists, and yet you're going to act like it doesn't. So again, I haven't acted like it doesn't. I've explained why I have zero confidence that any of their assumptions about what's actually happening in their little black box experiments with their 74 mirrors has anything to do with reality. So you know that it exists, okay, and I know you'll just say, but the quantum eraser experiment, yes, the quantum eraser experiment relies on polarizing filters, and they assume that polarizing filters are 50-50, which they're not, and they also assume, okay, that they understand how polarizing filters work, which they don't. And so it has 888 mirrors. Yeah, well, you don't think that's important because you understand exactly how photons reflect off of mirrors. You know exactly how much energy goes in, how much time it takes. You know all of the mechanics. They just bounce off the wall of the mirror, right? The mirror is just a wall. The mirror is not made of electrons and protons. No, it's a wall, and the photon just bounces off the wall. Right. And you give a shit about physics. And it's all a bunch of lying scientists. No, it's a bunch of scientists who take tiny shreds of indication, tiny weak pieces of evidence, and build a whole theory on top of it. It's really weak evidence. It's not strong evidence. It's not crystal clear evidence. It's not any of that. It's weak. And until you have better evidence, you can't make all these presumptions. Okay, fine, you dispute the interpretation of the experiment. I dispute the interpretation of the function of the elements in the experiment, just as I dispute the existence of Huygens as a fact. Fine, but don't say it hasn't been done. Again, I never said the quantum eraser experiment that hasn't been done. It's not a which way experiment. It's not detecting which slit the damn thing went through. It's detecting what location it ended up in. I mean, it's just idiotic to call it a which way experiment, because it's not. Because that'd be lying, and that would make you a lying liar, now wouldn't it? So again, I haven't lied about any of these things. I haven't avoided those conversations. It's just complete crap. The fact is, Susskind didn't talk about quantum eraser experiments or any of that crap. He talked about detecting with energy something going by. Clear difference, jackass. And that experiment hasn't been done. Anyway, I've gotten about as far as I can go for tonight. Well, I hope you die. I'm going to call it a night because I have to actually go to a job tomorrow, unlike you. So this is just more crap that's completely unnecessary, but whatever. Ha ha. Ha ha, sucker. I hope your job kills you. And I want to get at least some sleep before that happens. Ari rar. Yeah, well, fuck you. Get what you deserve, shithead. You're just a shit. A fucking trash-talking shit liar. Alright. Alright, might as well do this last one. Having long hair that actually looks good is one thing, but dude, your hair does not look good. So this comes from some guy with no account. So we don't get to see what his stupid look is. You know, how he's Mr. Cool. And again, I don't really give a shit. Unless you're a chick, so identify yourself as a chick and say, oh, I hate your hair. Okay? If you're a guy and you hate my hair, why should I care? Right? I couldn't care. But, you know, frankly, yeah, again, why should I care about your opinion? So go survey a bunch of chicks and see if the chicks all say, oh yeah, I hate that long blonde hairy thing. That's terrible. You really should consider going to a barber and getting a haircut. You know, why should I consider going to a barber to cut hair? I mean, you can just take scissors and cut it. It's not a big deal. It's not fucking physics. You know, freaking cutting hair isn't brain surgery, shithead. Newsflash, it's not the 60s. I give a shit. Like, I'm supposed to be like the rest of you Borgites, and I'm supposed to live my life based on what stupid little cultural fad is popular at any one moment. I didn't say groovy when groovy was in, okay? I didn't play their game, so fuck you. People aren't having unprotected sex with anybody. I don't even know what that means. Dressing like hobos, not wearing seat belts, listening to Iron Butterfly, or hitchhiking without worrying they're going to get murdered by some psycho. So again, he's like he's saying I'm somehow a generation person arguing for it or something. No, this isn't a generation statement, asshole. My hair grows on my head. Okay, I had a crew cut when I was a kid, and I didn't like it. So once my parents allowed me to choose how to let my hair grow, I said, let it grow. Okay, and I didn't care. I just never cared, okay? Maybe you care about that shit. I just don't care. Can you understand that somebody could just not care? I just don't care. Hair grows on my head. I let it do whatever it wants to do. Pretty much I let my fingernails do what they want to do until they get a little too long, and then you have to cut them. But that's it. It's not complicated. I'm not trying to be stylish, asshole. You see, there's no jewelry, you know. I don't have any tattoos. I'm not trying to make a statement, fuckhead. People don't do things anymore unless they're from Oregon. Come on, man. So I don't even know what that means. But whatever. Go suck on the Borg's, you know, whatever, silicone breast. You know, fuck you. You know, I'm not interested in playing that. Homie, don't do that. Fuckhead. Alright, now it's enough of a video. Okay. God, people are just so obnoxious. Let's see. I'm sorry, but the idea that scientists would the world over are lying about the double slit experiment is just too absurd even for me. So the point was they're lying about the single slit pattern, but in effect they are lying about the double slit. I mean, Susskind didn't explain how there's two patterns. They always avoid that because there's no wave model for that. Water waves don't make two patterns. So they don't have any explanation for where that came from. They're clueless. Nothing. They got no way to explain it. So you know, what do you want me to say? You don't think they know. So they don't know there's two patterns. Susskind doesn't know that the double slit pattern is actually bars. Well, I'll draw it. I mean, it's such a standard known thing. For anybody who knows anything about this experiment knows this shit. And you're saying it's okay if physics teachers don't acknowledge the existence of it, right? So I mean, the single slit creates just, you know, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And the center maxima is actually 3. You know, there's a dark in the middle, and it gets wiped out by the lights. All right, so the double slit, okay, now if you do the single hair, you'll just get the single slit pattern. But if you do the double slit, you'll get a pattern, okay, bar, 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 and then dead, and then bar, 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 and then dead, and then in the middle there'll be a big bar, and then bar, 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 and then bar, 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 bar. See, you get this? So there's 2 patterns. There's bars, and you know, their math just doesn't account for these 2 patterns. So there's more bars in this first section, then less bars, and then less bars, and then less bars. And the distance between them, the dark spots, get bigger and bigger as you go further and further away. But there's these huge dead spots where there's supposed to be a bright bar, and there's no bright bar. It's missing. And it's more than one, actually, but anyway. So that's the real pattern, idiot. And it doesn't do what their math says, which, you know, it's supposed to be like it's really bright here in the middle and it gets substantially weaker and substantially weaker, and it doesn't do that. But anyway, so there's facts. And you're going to sit there and imply that I am saying something crazy because I point out that there's physical facts that they're not acknowledging. So he doesn't acknowledge that the single slit creates a lot of pattern, clear fact, all right, and he doesn't acknowledge that the double slit creates a complex pattern, okay, that has essentially 2 patterns in it. And you're saying I'm the one who's the criminal because I've pointed out how he's cheated the evidence. He's not only quote mining the evidence in that he's implying that single slits fit water waves, that they do the same thing water waves do when they don't. And he's clearly cheating the evidence because he doesn't even talk about diffraction gradients, which project images to the different locations. So I pointed out all these facts, and you're saying I'm the bad guy because what are you doing? I'm sorry, but the idea that scientists the world over are lying about the double slit experiment. Well, what else can it be? You're saying they're ignorant about their foundational experiment. They call this the foundational experiment. They call it the nail in the coffin evidence for wave theory. They call it lots of things. This is the foundation of quantum mechanics, this experiment. And you're telling me that you think they don't know the facts of their own foundational experiment. And I'm arguing, to me, that seems incredible that they don't know these facts. And so the only explanation I can come up with is they just don't care. They want to make a point, and so they're going to quote mine the evidence to make their argument. And they really don't care if they're cutting a few corners, you know, factual corners, important factual corners. It is just too observe even for me. Oh, so whatever. No. Just saying, that's you're bad then, asshole. I mean, all I can do is point it out, all right? What am I supposed to say to you? You're telling me, in spite of the fact that you clearly pointed out how he's misrepresenting the truth, fuck you. That's what you're saying to me. Fuck you. I point out how their evidence isn't really good evidence. They come to court with a really bad argument based on a bunch of bad evidence, and you're basically saying, I want to convict anyway. I like this prosecutor. This prosecutor's never wrong. Isn't that all you're doing? That's all you're doing. So fuck you. Alright, now we're done. Alright, so until the next time and such.